Hello, this is an old rabbi, and I'm going to tell you a little tale. Something that was written a long time ago. And I'd like to get into this and explain a little bit before we start. We step into another time and place that not much is happening until it's revealed to us, and it's just waiting to be explored. There are two children who will take us on a journey that is very interesting and believable to those with an imagination. C.S. Lewis is a master, and we're going to take you into a journey of the part of Narnia that most people haven't read or even heard of. And it's called The Magicians Nephew, and it's going to start out somewhere in the garden. Alright, so I'd like to comment before I start. C.S. Lewis, he really starts off this story just like no other. He's a master at writing. And there's actually even a section in the back of the book where it talks about how to storytell. And I think this man definitely has something to learn from and pull from. Not just read about his introduction, but actually read the story. And he's got a brilliant approach. It shows his capability of portraying a message without actually describing it. And he just throws some little, I mean, not describing it, but actually saying it. He throws some descriptions in there, pictorial words that just, wow, you're not going to believe what you're going to hear. And he's got a powerful way of portraying a message with an exact description. And so let's see. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and read from the book, Magicians Nephew. And what I did is to narrate and focus on certain sections and compare it to what I believe is what Scripture is saying. And this is strictly my interpretation. If you got a problem with it, then you got a problem with it. But I believe you should listen because it's definitely got some spiritual insight. And I believe it's a text within a text. It's not actually Genesis account, but it is definitely referring to it in a different light. What C.S. Lewis does is he goes in between the text, not text for text. He does throw some text in there, but a lot of in between and what if, and just kind of like a lot of stuff that I thought about. And I found that really interesting. So this is what I believe it is, and somebody else may believe another thing. I'm not going to argue that. But here's mine, and go ahead and listen to it. All right, so this is the section that I took out of this book, and I put A to A. And I'm going to go ahead and read it, and then I'll go over it. This is a story about something that happened a long time ago when your grandfather was a child. It is a very important story because it shows how all the comings and goings between our world and the land of Narnia first began. In those days, Mr. Sherlock Holmes was still living in Baker Street, and the Bastables were looking for treasures in the Lewisham Road. Now, you're going to say, okay, well, Adam and Eve is talking about Sherlock Holmes. That's because this is written for a child to understand. And it's written to his children. He wrote the entire Narnia series for his children to enjoy and treasure and go on an adventure in their mind and be able to relate Scripture when they hear it. So, let's see. In those days, if you were a boy, you had to wear a stiff Eton collar every day, and schools were usually nastier than now. But meals were nicer, and as for sweets, I won't tell you how cheap and good they were, because it would only make your mouth water in vain. And in those days, there lived in London a girl called Polly Plummer. All right, so this is the introduction. This is a story about something that has happened a long time ago when your grandfather was a child. Now, if you understand a kid, the way they think, 5 minutes to them is like, wow, a couple hours. So if you say, when your grandfather was a child, to them, it's like, wow, were there dinosaurs back then? You know, they just like, they can't comprehend that. They can't comprehend that that's only, 70 some years or 60 years or however old the grandparent is. They're just thinking, like, to them it's forever, beginning of time, man. There was no people before them. So to a child, that's quite a deep thought. That's a long time ago. And so it is a very important story because it shows how all the comings and goings between our world and the land of Narnia first began. So he makes that thing say, look, this is one of the most key stories. And it's a key story, and it's just one that you need to really think about, because it really explains, it's going to help you along the way. And if you listen to the story and you see the Garden of Eden, you're going to see that that's a key part of Scripture. You can't leave out. If you leave out the Garden of Eden, then the cross means nothing. See, so this is an important part, and he's drawn attention to it. And in those days, Mr. Sherlock Holmes was living in Baker Street, and the stables were looking around for treasure in the Lewisham Road. In those days, okay, now watch. Now, this is where he draws the attention. In those days, if you were a boy, you had to wear a stiff Eton collar every day. Now, the whole description of the stiff collar, and you had to have a button. You couldn't have it loose like today, and it's stiff. So it's a time of strict discipline. It's a time of just a tough time to be a child, because you couldn't just relax and wear these relaxing clothes. You had to, everything was uptight and just, so it's, wow, what kind of picture he paints just by saying that. So the next part he says, and schools were usually nastier than now. So he doesn't really say too much more in there, but what I would assume that he's saying is like the hygiene. Because, today we got a lot of, we got tiles, we got nice made floors, not dirt. We got drains for the water, we got drywall instead of brick, and everything's a lot cleaner. We got paint on there. We got weather stripping, keeps all the dirt out. We got just clean sewer systems. The water's better. Hygiene, basically. That's the way I would interpret it. But you see what I mean by just giving a small description of how much he says without actually saying it. Going on, and he says, but meals were nicer. Now that's a very short sentence, but think about it for a minute. Nicer than what? What is he referring to? I really don't have a clue. Everybody's own interpretation. Was he referring to how good mom's meals are, but it's nicer? I don't know. But could it be referring to the restaurant food? Could it be referring to the hospital food, the hotel food, the cafeteria food, the TV dinners? Who knows? I don't think they had TV dinners back in C.S. Lewis days, but nicer than what? So it's still a vivid picture, but so much, he just leaves so much to the imagination. And who knows, when he read this to his kids, did he really explain it to them, or did he just read it and just leave it and look at them and wait for them to answer and just had interaction? I think it would have been really interesting to see him read to his children this story. I'm sure there was all kinds of feedback. This is some good stuff. Going further, and as for the sweets, I won't tell you how cheap and good they were, because it would only make your mouth water in vain. Now, wow. It's like he's getting ready to tell us something. He doesn't tell us something, and he says, you know, it's better that I would just make your mouth water. He's tempting us. He's almost being like the serpent in the garden, saying, look at it. So what I believe this is referring to the fruits in the garden. Like Adam and Eve first saw all the fruits there. And it's like, wow, what fruits? I'm sure there were fruits there that we don't even see today. So these details were left out, and he's just trying to protect us from something, you know. Really, the implications and the intriguing. He throws a lot of intrigue in there. At least he did to me. I don't know about you, but you see, this is the danger of lust. He builds up hype over an age of innocence. Not much to look forward to, except the unspeakable pleasure. It's almost as he's letting out and building up to something to just make us partake or to want to partake. And the last part of AA is, in those days there lived in London a girl called Polly Plummer. So I did a little bit of research on the name. I thought that was kind of interesting because he mentions her last name, her first name and her last name, and but he doesn't mention the boy's first name and last name. He only mentions his first name. And also the other thing I like to point out too is he starts out with the girl, which is opposite of Genesis, which actually starts out with the boy. So the name Polly, her first name, is actually a Hebrew name. And in Hebrew, it means wished for, like a wished for child, rebellion or bitter. And plumber is an Old English origin, and it's used mainly someone who lives near a plum tree, or one who deals in feathers. But I think the one near a plum tree is probably pretty interesting because there was a lot of fruits. It was in the garden. So maybe she decided to live near the plum tree, so he just kind of threw that out there because that was a name that was familiar. And it was known for living near a plum tree. So that was like a hidden message there to kind of deliver what he's trying to say. So I just kind of found that interesting. And just where he starts out with the girl instead of the boy. And so we're going to end it right there. And of course, the other thing is, look at, just like I said, how much he has said by literally not saying that much. Boy, he really builds up a lot of hype. And that's just in the intro. He hasn't even started the story yet. Wow, that's powerful writing. And just wanted to point that out and really give him tribute because that's quite an accomplishment. At least that's what I think. And tell me what you think, and I'm going to try to continue this on. Thank you, and goodbye. Please subscribe, and please leave some comments and pass it on.